Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of All Summer in a Day. I hope all of you are keeping safe and have gone through this video very carefully. Before we move on, I would like to have a quick recap of the story we had done in the first video so far. This story has been set on the planet Venus. After 7 years of continuous rain, the scientists on Venus have forecast that the sun will come out for a short period of time. The 9-year-old children in the schoolroom are waiting for a momentous occasion. They have seen the sun only once in their lives when they were 2 years old. They cannot remember how it looks. Margot, whose pale, thin girl, whom the other children do not like, she had lived in Ohio till she was 5. She has many memories of the sun. Unlike her, all the other children had seen the sun only for a day 7 years ago. The sun had come out for an hour. They have written about the sun, while she had written a poem on the sun, that it is like a flower that blossoms for an hour. Margot on the planet Venus was in a depressed state of mind. She could not mingle with the other children. She would not play games with them. She would not go into the tunnels. She would not even sing with them unless they were singing about the sun. The rest of the children, they envied Margot, as she had come only 5 years ago. When she said that the sun was like a penny or a fire, they did not believe her. It was heard that her parents were planning to take her away from the underground colony on Venus and send her back on Earth. Margot looks out of the window, waiting silently for the rain to stop and the sun to come out. William taunts her. He says it's all a joke. Nothing is going to happen. The girl believes in what the scientists have predicted. Her eyes are disappointed. The children push her around and they push her into a tunnel where there is a room and a closet. They push her into the closet and lock the door. She pleads and she cries and makes protests, but the children pay no heed. After locking her, the children quickly return back to the class, and moments later, the rain stops and the sun appears. Moving on to the story, it was the color of a flaming bronze and it was very large, and the sky around it was a blazing blue tile color. We get to know that the sun has come out, and the children, as they open the door, they can see the sun. The sun has been described as flaming bronze, yellow, golden color. It was very large, and the sky looked blue. After all the grey, the clouds, the fog, the rain, suddenly the sky looked blue. Even the jungle, it burned with sunlight. As the children, they were released from their spell. They rushed out yelling into the springtime. The children go running out into the greens outside the school because it has suddenly become spring. Now don't go too far, called the teacher after them. You've only 2 hours, you know. You wouldn't want to get caught out. The teacher tells them, don't go very far because you have got only 2 hours. The sun would be out only for 2 hours and you don't want to be caught in the rain again. But they were running, turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets, letting the sun burn their arms. So they had their faces towards the sun. They took off their jackets. They wanted the sun's heat to touch their skins. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? Much, much better. The children were talking about the sun. They stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus, that grew and never stopped growing. The children, they went running along to the jungle, and the jungle was so thick because it kept growing, because it was always raining over there. Tumultuously, even as you watched it, means very loudly, even as you watched it, it was a nest of octopi, all clustered, the leaves, everything all clustered up together, like great arms of flesh, like weed wavering, flowering in brief spring. But suddenly it appeared as if even the forest, it suddenly seemed as if it was flowering in that small, brief period of spring that they were experiencing. It was the color of rubber and ash. This jungle from the many years without the sun. So the jungle that was there, it was the color of rubber and ash, means it was always black, dark. It never had the green color, because leaves are green due to the photosynthesis that they have because of the sunshine. But here, the leaves, they were all rubber color or ash color. They were black in color because they had been there since many years without the sun. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink. It was the color of the moon. So either it was pale or it was dark and black. The children lay out laughing on the jungle mattress and heard it sigh, squeak under them, resilient and alive. So children, they were moving out, laughing, lying in the jungle, and even the jungle seemed to sigh as if it was so happy. Why? Because it was alive as the sun had come out. They ran among the trees, they slipped and fell. They pushed each other, they played hide and seek, they played tag, but most of all, most of the time, what did they do? They would look up at the sun. They squinted at the sun, means with their eyes closed, looking at the sun. Now, you can't look at the sun uh, with open, bright eyes because it is so bright. So they squinted, the eyes closed, and tears ran down their faces. They put their hands up to that yellowness and that amazing blueness, and they breathed of the fresh, fresh air and listened to the silence which suspended them in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. So they not only looked up at the looked up at the sun, they also breathed in the fresh air. They saw the blue sky which was there. They could hear the silence for them. Why? Because they've always heard the noise of the rain, the thunder, the storms, the hurricanes, the avalanches. But suddenly there was absolute silence there, and they were so happy. They looked at everything and savored everything. Savored means relished, took in everything. Then, wildly like animals, they escaped from their caves. They ran and ran in shouting circles. So, just like wild animals when they're set free, similarly, these children had been set free, and they ran around in circles, shouting, screaming, and enjoying the sun. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. So they kept on running and running and enjoying the sunshine for a complete hour. And then, in the midst of their running, so while they were running, suddenly one of the girls wailed. She cried out, and everybody stopped running. The girl, standing in the open, she held out her hand and she said, "Oh, look, look," she said, trembling. They came slowly to look at her open palm. In the center of her palm, cupped and huge, there was a single raindrop. She began to cry looking at it. They glanced quietly at the sun. Oh, oh, they were disappointed, very unhappy. Why? Because the sun was disappearing, it was going away, and the clouds were coming back. A few cold drops fell on their noses, their cheeks, and on their mouth. The sun faded behind a stir of mist, so there was fog coming in, and the sun, it was fading away. A cold wind began to blow. They turned and they started to walk back to the underground house that is towards their school, their hands at their sides and their smiles vanishing away. Suddenly, what happened was there was a boom of thunder, and like leaves before a new hurricane, they tumbled upon each other, means they began to run. Why? Because they knew that suddenly now the thunder is going to be, it's going to come closer, it will rain, and they will all get drenched. There was lightning which struck 10 miles away, and then 5 miles, a mile, half a mile. The sky, it darkened into midnight in a flash. So within minutes, the sky became dark. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining hard. Then they closed the door and heard the gigantic sound of the rain. So they had got into their classrooms well in time, closed the door, and then it began to rain. There was great sound of rain falling in tons and avalanches everywhere and forever. So that same noise of avalanches, thunder, the storm, the rain came back again and forever. Why? Because again now, after 7 years, the sun would come back out in Venus. Will it be 7 more years? Yes, 7. Then one of them gave a cry. So while they were very disappointed that the sun had disappeared and now they'd have to wait 7 years again for the sun to come out, suddenly one of the children cried out, Margot. Says, what? She's still in the closet where we locked her. And then they realized that they had forgotten all about Margot. She's still in the closet where we locked her. Margot. They stood as if someone had driven them like so many stakes into the floor. They were standing there. They were shocked when they suddenly realized that they had completely forgotten about her. They looked at each other and then they looked away. They looked at each other and then they looked away. Why? Because the children were ashamed of themselves. They felt ashamed that she who had wanted to see the sun after so many years, she who had longed to see the sun, and she was unable to see it because they had locked her up. So, remembering that the girl was still there where they had locked her, they were, hit as if by a bolt from the blue. And they all stood glued to the ground. They felt ashamed. They felt guilty of themselves. They had denied the poor girl the one joy she had been waiting for, and all for a bit of fun. They looked at each other and then they looked away. They glanced at the world that was raining now and raining steadily. They looked out and they saw that there was no more sunshine but only rain. They could not meet each other's glances. Why? Because they were ashamed of what they had done to Margot. Their faces were solemn and pale. They looked at their hands and their feet, their faces down. So they were guilty. They were ashamed of themselves for what they had done. They walked slowly and silently to the closet door and unlocked it. Margot, one of the girls said. Well, no one moved. Go on, whispered the girl. They walked slowly down the hall in the sound of cold rain. They turned through the doorway to the room in the sound of the storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. They walked over to the closet door slowly and they stood by it. Behind the closet door, there was only silence now. They unlocked the door even more slowly and let Margot out. So the children who had actually locked Margot into the cupboard, into the closet, just for fun's sake, after having experienced the sun, they realized that they had done a wrong thing. They felt ashamed, they felt guilty. They felt guilty that they had denied the poor girl the one joy that she had been waiting for. And they had denied her all this just because of fun. It was cruel on their part. It was unpardonable. Guilty and ashamed, they had walked silently to the closet door and unlocked it and let Margot out. But they stood there with their heads hanging down in shame, their eyes seeking her forgiveness. I hope you've understood the story. I will now move on to the justification of the title. The title is All Summer in a Day. The story is about a group of children who live on the planet Venus and they have seen only rains for the past 7 years. The scientists have predicted that the sun will appear for 2 hours and they can experience all summer in a day. When the sun does come out, the children begin to run around and enjoy the sun. Their happiness knows no bounds. They run through the jungle, turn their faces towards the sky. They feel the sun on their cheeks. They enjoy this change in the weather, but only for an hour. But it is in this 1 hour that they experience all the summer in just a day. Therefore, the title is Justified. Character sketch. Margot, she's a weak, thin girl who appears to have been lost in the rain for years and then has lost the blue from her eyes, the red from her mouth, and the yellow from her hair because she has not been in the sunshine since so long. She cannot mingle with the other children, so she stands apart from them. She doesn't play any games with them, but only sings about the sun and the summer. Margot had come from the earth 5 years ago, and therefore she remembers the sun and the sky. This is the reason why the children were jealous of her. Symbolism and the theme of the story. Sun is the major symbol in this particular story. The sun symbolizes a promise of tomorrow or immortality. The sun is a reminder of who they all really are as humans. The children lock Margot in the closet prior to the sun coming out, and therefore they are incapable of empathy and devoid of any emotion. They just have jealousy for Margot. They are pale, colorless both in appearance and emotion. Only after experiencing the sun do the children feel remorse for their action. Means they feel guilty. They feel ashamed for what they had done to Margot. Therefore, the sun symbolizes a promise of a return to who humans really are and how they experience life on earth. The theme of the story, All Summer in a Day, is that human nature drives people to be cruel to those who are different and inspire jealousy. Just like the other children, they were cruel, they were jealous of Margot. Why? Because she was different from them. The other children envy Margot because she is the only one of them who remembers seeing the sun. But after experiencing the sun, they feel remorse, they feel pity, they feel that she should forgive them for their actions. If we look at it in real life, when we see people who are doing better than us in life, we are always jealous of them. We always want to bring them down. But later, sometime in life, we realize that these things that we do are wrong. Just like the children realized that what they had done to Margot was not right at all. So that is why they feel remorse for their actions. I have now given you a worksheet. Please go through this particular worksheet and answer the questions that follow. This work should be done in your literature notebooks. Go through the video carefully so that we may discuss, and in case of any problems, they can be solved in the interactive class. Take care. Bye bye.